Hello and welcome to the Great Telco Debate 2020 and our fifth topic for this year. Keeping the customer satisfied. Is it time for telcos to finally get real? Well, returning for the seventh outing of the annual Great Telco Debate are Chris Lewis and Graham Wild. Welcome back again.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
It's the highlight of the year, Guy.
It certainly is, Chris. And in a moment, we'll introduce our industry guests, our expert witnesses, who will give their views on the topic. And then we'll present our motion. And it's this motion that we want you to vote on, either for or against. And Chris and Graham will do some last-minute campaigning to support their views and try and persuade you. Graham, what's the premise behind today's subject?
Well, Guy, this is a debate that we've had in a number of different forms several times in the Great Telco Debate over the years. And it's partly, I suppose, around whether telcos really do understand what it takes to keep their customers happy. And it's also partly around what role do they play in doing that. You might think, for example, that telco is really just a kind of dumb pipe over which lots of interesting services like Netflix, Spotify and so on get delivered. Or you might think that 5G, for example, new technologies offer a way to customize and differentiate an offering to customers, assuming you knew what those customers really want.
Well, indeed. And thank you, Graham. Time to introduce our industry guests to get more insight, and they'll be presenting their expert witness statements. And I would like to welcome Bill Chang, CEO Enterprise Group at Singtel, Ross Singleton, Chair of UK 5G, Phil Skipper, Head of IoT Business Development at Vodafone Business, Phil Jordan, Group CIO at Sainsburys, and Phil Sorsky, SVP Service Provider Sales EMEA at CommScope. Hello everybody and welcome to the Great Telco Debate 2020. Chris, over to you to kick off proceedings.
Thank you, Guy, and could I add my welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Great Telco Debate. We always, as an industry, spend a lot of time talking about the technology and the ways in which the telcos organise themselves. But of course, the important bit at the end of the day is how the customers get their services and how that affects their lives and their businesses. So I'm delighted to have such a great panel with us today to contribute, as Guy said, their expert witness views, which will then feed into the latter debate. So let's get the things moving. Let's start off. I'm delighted to welcome Bill Chang from Singtel to the Great Telco Debate. Bill, we've been trying to get you on board for many years. It's great to have you with us. Could you please present to us your short presentation on keeping the customer happy?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning to all of you, and I hope you're all safe and healthy despite of this pandemic. It gives me great pleasure to join this session and share with you on the exciting developments of Singtel's 5G multi-access edge compute platform. This is a very important development which we are now in the midst of trialing with a few very key enterprises in this region as we stage this whole rollout across 5G in many countries. Our 5G multi-access edge compute platform, or what's called 5G MEC, aggregates the low latency, high bandwidth, software-defined network with the compute, data storage, data analytics, and AI capabilities at the edge near our customers' premise. And this delivers real-time applications, services, and workloads with assured SLAs for enterprises. This platform will unlock a host of new and exciting use cases that is not possible today with current technologies and architectures. Some of these real-time applications and services include autonomous robotics in factories, smart drones, AGVs, and automated management systems in port management and port operations, immersive 8K, augmented reality, virtual reality, or what's called mixed reality experiences, and cloud gaming. We're in the midst of a number of advanced trials with lead enterprises in this region, and many of them have exciting use cases that demand assured low latency performances. With our 5G MEC platform, we'll be able to develop a host of ecosystem providers like smart apps developers for IoT devices, vertical industry solution providers, and also cloud hyperscalers to best serve our enterprise customers' needs. Enterprises can also subscribe to various cloud providers with their edge stacks or have access to a private cloud version for sensitive data and workloads. This gives enterprises the options to deploy a hybrid edge cloud stack to best meet their needs and also helps lower their cost as a result. I would urge the telcos who are rolling out similar 5G MEC platforms to work together to create standards for our individual platforms such that we can support global, regional customers and the ecosystem partners for their 5G needs, like pretty much how we made global roaming arrangements seamless for our customers. We firmly believe that this 5G MEC platform and our development of the ecosystem partners will help enterprises to accelerate their digitalization initiatives, improving their productivity. It will also spur the development of cutting-edge applications and IoT devices, and more importantly, drive innovations that will transform industries and really spur the economy's growth in times like this. There is this huge multiplier effect that is way beyond the telco industry that 5G will bring. And I'm absolutely bullish that this will really bring that whole transformative impact to economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's great to hear a positive story, that push. We'll come back to you with some questions in a minute. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Ros Singleton. And Ros, from your perspective, having been working within some of the operators, looking at that customer side, how do you see this issue of keeping the customer happy?
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much. Well, I think keeping the customer happy is actually going to be quite difficult with 5G. So the level of hype across the world and across all of the networks that are producing 5G will, I think, lead customers to expect an amazing experience, not just on the network, but from end to end. So they will expect seamless transitions. And I think the theme for me of what the customer expectation is going to be seamless transitions. So if I am going through an onboarding process, I might expect to be able to walk into a retail store or phone a call center or, work digitally and have everything be really fast, no triple layer forms or anything like that, utterly seamless, and for the MNO to have a good understanding of who I am and what I might be looking for, so I don't have to spend hours whichever channel I'm in, and so it carries across. Omnichannel is something that the MNOs, certainly in the UK, have been talking about for a very long time, but very few have achieved in any meaningful way. And so I think that whole expectation will be lifted. Equally, there'll be an expectation of seamless transitions between 5G and Wi-Fi. If you're playing something or doing something or watching something, if you like, or doing something like this where you need as much upload as download, customers are still going to expect to walk into a building and not have an interruption of their service. 5G has been sold very much as an amazing new technology, and whilst it is great and it can offer faster speeds, all those network issues are still there. The experience needs to be as slick as any other digital first platform, and most MNOs are not currently really digital first. So I think that's a challenge that's going to need to be faced into, and probably where there's going to need to be some hard lessons learned over the next couple of years. The other area, of course, where we don't talk so much about is private networks and industrial customers and the applications of 5G for that, which is a subject particularly close to my heart. But equally, that's a customer base which expects a certain sort of service that doesn't necessarily speak the same language, whether that's knowing what edge computing is or anything else, and expects its providers to speak its language. So again, for most of the MNOs who are used to providing enterprise telecom services, to actually providing operational networks is quite a big move. And so they are going to need to basically invest to be able to speak those languages to the customers and provide that really consistent end-to-end, always-on service, or they need to buy out and leave it to people who can actually do that.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for covering both the business and the consumer market. And of course, there is definitely a blending, a blurring of those two areas. Now on to Phil Skipper. And Phil, with your IoT business development hat on at Vodafone, and obviously you've been very close to customers in that market for many, many years. Well, please share with us your perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. In IoT, we're a little bit different because we are responsible for delivering our customers customer experience. So at the heart of that, it's delivering applications and services for customers which enable them to provide new services to their customers. So over the last sort of couple of years, we've now acquired a great batch of system integrators who are really specialist in understanding what customers need. So we've got expertise in manufacturing and in healthcare and in automotive. But at the heart of that, as customers use IoT, they become much more reliant on our services. So underpinning what we do has to be a network that delivers outstanding quality of service. And this becomes even more critical when you move into 5G, because 5G takes IoT from just data type applications, remote monitoring and checking where things are, into control. And I think we heard from Bill, all of the applications he was mentioning for 5G were control applications, autonomous vehicles and drones and remote medicine and so on. But the criticality of being able to deliver those becomes really, really high. And for us, delighting customers is not just about being able to build things. It's increasingly being able to support them for the lifetime of that application. And I think that's where we're really focused, building the network that enables these applications to deliver seamless service. And we do that by investing in the way that we build our networks, re-architect our networks, and expand our networks. But going forwards, you also can't forget that the telco becomes part of a much bigger ecosystem. And it's keeping that ecosystem together to deliver the performance that customers need. That's going to be the critical differentiator going forwards. So for us, we look at this and say, a lot of what we do is actually invisible. We enable our customers' customer experience, but by doing that, it puts the telco right at the heart of what our customers need. And for us, being able to deliver this quality of service, being able to maintain these ecosystems is really the key to delighting our customers going forwards.
I'm now delighted to welcome back to the Great Telco Debate Phil Jordan. Last time, Phil, when you were with us, you were the Group CIO at Telefonica. Now you've jumped sides and the Group CIO at Sainsburys. So we're really keen to get this view from your side now, running the IT and operations of a major supermarket chain, as to how you will be kept happy by the telecoms players. Over to you.
Yeah, hi Chris, and it's great to be back. Poacher and gamekeeper springs to mind, so I'm here very much as a customer of the industry now. And I think the issue with this whole topic is industry enthusiasm staying in check with customer expectation, because we're going to talk a lot about interesting and new use cases, as we mentioned earlier, but I think from a customer perspective, I think we're still in the age of I really need fantastic ubiquitous connectivity as a service. You know, we got Black Friday coming up soon, and businesses that are entirely digital. We have 5 million more people eating in the UK this Christmas with the pandemic, and we've got 30% of our sales going through in-store digital handsets. So having, unbelievably reliable connectivity, as Phil Skipper just talked about, and having that ubiquitous is still the paramount experience that we need, and what I need from my telco more than anything else. Of course, I need that done at super cost efficiency. We're heading into a recession. Mine's a 2.5% margin business, so I want ubiquitous connectivity at the lowest cost possible. And then finally, I'm interested in where we go next to break the next paradigm of cost, SDN and manageability of networks, and how do I go even further on cost efficiency. So before we even get to the exciting debate that I think the industry wants to have about new and exciting use cases, please don't forget that the customer just wants good old-fashioned, brilliant connectivity to base their business on. And then, but beyond that, if I think about the extent of the question, again, about keeping industry enthusiasm and customer expectation in check, of course, we want to understand how new developments in technology can transform our customer experience, first and foremost, probably, then our operations, and then our colleague experience, probably in that order as well. But in this regard, context is king, right? So the telcos will have to bring real live context, understand my business problems. And I have a few questions for the debate, really, is can the telcos do that? Can the telcos bring the technology and the context to retail, for example? It's a question, and I think, as Ross said, how do you help me transition from third and fourth generation networks to fifth generation networks and do that cost effectively? And how do you monetize 5G in the way you need to and maintain a really cost effective transition for me? So, Chris, I think we haven't moved too far from the days of I just need great connectivity as a service. I see the opportunity of 5G and the new technology operations and technology developments, but I think context is king, and the telcos have to really be clear that they're going to understand the business problems of their customers to be able to get beyond connectivity. And I think we've had this debate every year for 10 years.
Many thanks, Phil. It's always great to get your perspectives on it. You put things in context, and obviously you're asking for things to be contextualized going forward as well. And to our final witness, I'm delighted to welcome Phil Solsky from CommScope. Phil, with your position with CommScope and your experience with the telecom industry, how are you and you helping the telcos keep those customers happy?
Well, firstly, I would say that if the telco aspiration is to be the best at plumbing and have a highly reliable, ubiquitous network, and that's their only aspiration, that would be a good starting point. But that's only entry stakes in terms of delighting customers. And if I focus more on the 5G side than the fibre side, we're really starting to see a momentum gain now in 5G implementation, both in terms of infrastructure from the wireless operators, but also in terms of potential applications to exploit what 5G can offer. And if we take 4 key differences between 5G and 4G, of course, you've got more efficient use of spectrum itself, which is a benefit to the operator and indirectly to the operator's customers. You've certainly got higher speeds and speeds that now approach the kind of speeds you could have on dedicated fibre, so that the bandwidth bottleneck is effectively being removed for application developers. But for me, the 2 key differences in terms of 4G to 5G are the ultra reliable aspect of 5G and the fact that it is super low latency. And that's what opens up all kinds of vertical applications in terms of retail, as Phil alluded to, transportation, shipping, telemedicine, remote telemedicine, education, and so on. But you're not going to be able to exploit all of these vertical applications without the vertical knowledge within those relative sectors. Now, telcos historically have not shown a great capability of really getting to understand the business of their customers. So to Phil's example, it could be retail or manufacturing, to really get into the detail of how you can improve the efficiency of those businesses. You've really got to be from that business. So I would argue that for large telcos and large corporate customers, there will still be a room for a third party. And by a third party, I'm talking about people like IBM, Capgemini, systems integrators that can bring the new digitized world together and help exploit those potential advantages. But more importantly, for the medium-sized businesses, of which in the UK alone, there are at least 35,000 medium-sized companies, 400 or 500 people that will need to exploit the advantage of 5G. And for me, the only way they'll do that is if the telcos provide a platform, a highly reliable platform, but invite third-party developers, third-party integrators that know all these vertical markets. They understand telemedicine, they understand retail, they understand automotive. And by providing that platform, it'll generate an ecosystem where the applications that the end users need will be achieved and at a sensible cost. In a similar way to the App Store with Apple. Apple only keeps around 30% of the revenue generated, 70%, in some cases 85% of the revenue goes to those third-party app developers. And I'd see a same model applying for 5G and telco, where the telcos facilitate the capability, but it's these third-party integrators that are invited to host on top that will allow both them and the telco to delight the customer.
Thank you very much, Phil. And I think everyone will agree the different perspectives that we always bring to the table in the Great Telco Debate really do make people think about the way in which this industry moves forward, the pressures on it, of course, but also the opportunities. So if I might come back to you, Bill, in the role that you play there with Singtel, you talk about this new 5G combination of connectivity, storage, and processing that is this MEC, which is going to bring the power of compute closer to the customer. How much of an advantage is it, given that Singtel has such a big systems integration business as part of the organization? Because as Phil Solsky just said, we need to have other parties involved with the many skills. So how big a deal is it for you at Singtel that you've got that major systems integration capability in-house?
Very good question, Chris. I think, like you rightly pointed, in the B2B arm of Singtel, we actually have a very big system integration. Our non-telecoms revenues is actually 53% of our total revenues. That means it's actually bigger than the telecoms infrastructure services stack. So I think we're unique in that way. So what's called the ICT and digital stacks is actually comprising of cloud services, stuff that we do in digital, AI, analytics, UI, UX, mobility solutions, a lot of stuff we do in cyber. We've got a very big cyber practice of 2,000 over people globally. So we do have, a significant, resource pool that does, and we're behind many of the smart nation initiatives in Singapore, which wants to be progressing and transforming into a smart nation, just like smart cities in this region. So we do have that. And as we think about 5G, we think, that's a very useful capability, because it's not just about building the infrastructure and a platform that allows us to aggregate the cloud and network capabilities at the edge at very low latency with the committed SLAs. And it also allows us to plug in through APIs with many, many apps providers. And with our large system integration arm, NCS, it allows us to also monetize beyond the infrastructure and platform stack into the services stack. How do we help customers to evolve their use cases? How do you make them into actual deployments? How do you make use of the data that's on the edge platform, and to make good sense of that, whether the data goes into video analytics, for example, smart cameras that uses this for certain public safety or traffic management. How do you do the analytics around that? So we're behind a lot of the work we do in video AI. We do a lot of interesting things with regards to robotics, the use of robotics into hospitals for dispensing, the sort of pharmacy, so that people don't have to wait 45 minutes to get to that pharmacy. By the time they see the doctor and they get down, the pharmacy is really packed with robotic arms, offering all this, the pills that the patients need to take home. And all this is done in a matter of minutes. With very, very high sort of accuracy, better than what humans can do. So we're behind that, automating this into hospitals, a number of them in Singapore, in the polyclinics. So again, 5G will be a game changer to think about that. So there are many of these cases, and it requires a lot of services capabilities. And we certainly would use these capabilities within what we have with NCS. But at the same time, when we think about this, we are also opening up the platform to allow other service providers, other solution providers, whoever that's got this vertical solution capabilities that they think that they can write on our platform, that bring the aggregation of compute, low latency networks, the data analytics, and the AI processing. And then, they can then develop the solutions and the apps for the enterprises. So we do have a very big system integration arm, but at the same time, our platform has got to be ensuring that it's a universal access to allow all sorts of solution providers. Because in some countries that we operate in, we may not have a very big system integration arm, and we really have to have local or global or regional service providers, solution providers to, leverage on our platform to ensure that they can deliver to those customers' needs for 5G use cases.
Ross, turning back to you obviously the notion of having this sort of almost invisible service is very key, certainly in the consumer market. But can I ask you a question specifically about your comment about your pet subject of private networks? We've seen a lot of interest with private networks. A lot of the vendors seem to be working directly with those say large factories, larger organizations. What do you see as the role of the telco in delivering those private networks?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I imagine each of the telcos will have a very specific answer actually as to where they fit, because we don't just have 5G coming along at the moment. We also have potentially Open RAN, which also will provide an interesting set of opportunities, and again particularly in the SME space, which, as one of the Phils said, I think makes up a massive amount. I think it's about 90% in total of businesses in this country, or something like that. So I think there's some really interesting opportunities there. Clearly in UK 5G on the test beds and trials side, particularly in the CREATE programme, which has recently been announced with the factories of the future, which includes vehicles, planes, all sorts of things. It's very, very interesting, exciting, as well as, some of the original trials in the West Midlands and some of the work that's being done in the West Midlands. That involves the MNOs as part of a wider consortia, which includes the actual customer, so the demand side, so the factory themselves, and often other bodies as well who are helping to integrate that. So I think there's actually a great opportunity for some businesses to spring up, if you like, on top of the existing ICT businesses, because while there are the Capgeminis and Accentures and so on who will do integrations for, I don't know, let's say one of the large nationwide power delivery companies or something similar, there are actually a very significant number of smaller ICT integrators and vendors who are often quite specific to industry, and have been performing their IT and networking requirements for many years and know their customers incredibly well, and in a lot of cases have very close relationships with them. And I think there's an opportunity for them to expand their business, and also for some quite specific businesses to come up to provide specific solutions. Again, if the API thing comes to pass, such that works on MNOs networks to provide a degree of nationwide coverage as well as private networks coverage, then I think that is actually where there'll be quite a lot of interest. If you think about logistics, for example, you have two separate requirements. One is, on my site, I want my data to stay on my site. I want it to be incredibly secure and private. However, my stuff, whether it's lorries, containers, whatever, will be going up and down the country, maybe on railway tracks, maybe on motorways, hell, who knows, maybe even on barges again at some point. And it will be leaving the country in that way. So actually, how do I manage and track that all the way through while maintaining a degree of security, but maybe not necessarily the degree I need in my own network at my key site? And so again, will network slicing be the answer? I think that's a lot less likely, because it's a relatively expensive solution for an MNO. But the idea of having an API that you could plug in that allows you to carry that information through, still have the security that you need to be able to track the information around your stuff, whatever that happens to be, is really vital. So I do think there's a role to play for MNOs. Quite how that's going to work, I don't know. Some of it may well just be platform provision and getting out of the way, if they can do that.
Thank you very much, Ros. Phil Skipper, from your perspective, you talked about the need to provide that underlying quality. How far away are we from delivering that quality today?
Well, that's a great question, because I think what you have to look at is the value that we create is not in the build of these systems, and 5G creates opportunity to build lots of new use cases, but it's actually in the run. It's the ability to deliver those services ongoing for the duration that customer is using the application, be that on a mobile private network or be it on a public network. So I think telcos, and Vodafone's a good example, have made great strides ahead in actually creating these connectivity solutions based on reliability. And we spend a lot of work actually strengthening our networks, making them a lot more resilient. And I think over the last sort of COVID period, you've actually seen how reliant mobile networks are as they've scaled up significantly over a very, very short period of time. But I think the key, and this is the bit I think that people really need to look at, is we talk about these new applications and we talk about these big ecosystems. So for me, the issue is much more about how do you keep those ecosystems together to deliver the performance that the customer expects for the lifetime of the project. And for me, it's becoming much more about that process. It's not about the build, it's actually about the run. And I think that's where the telco actually has a really important role to play in keeping these ecosystems together and actually making sure that the customer gets the performance they want and the quality of service going forwards.
Excellent, thank you, Phil. Phil Jordan, you talked about your three sort of aspects of demand and addressing them in that sequence. How much, when you're talking to the telecoms providers, do they talk your language, or how much do they expect you to speak their language? Luckily enough, you speak both, but are they beginning to talk in your terms rather than in the terms of the technology?
Oh, I think there's a real effort to. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think across the whole industry, I think there's a recognition, and we've heard a lot of it today, haven't we, about the need for a platform and an ecosystem and bringing partners together. But I think the telcos are trying, yeah. But it's difficult and it's complex, right? Because if you think about just the use cases in our business and one business alone, right, for how might something like 5G or new generation networks change our business? We're an international logistics company with transportation networks, so there's all the use cases there around transport management. Obviously there's a huge opportunity in the supply chain of a business like ours, where we go sort of farm to fork and thinking about how we ensure provenance and we know that sustainability and eating locally and healthy eating and provenance is going to become more important. So all the application in that world as well. And then right way through to video-based analytics in the stores, and how do we do checkout in the future, and how do we manage theft in the stores and security and safety, and then connected stores and the sort of traditional areas of IoT. So trying, Chris, I think, but even in just one business like Sainsburys, it's a very broad church of context and examples, which is why I think Phil's comments earlier about a platform ecosystem and the telcos getting comfortable that they're a platform business and encouraging innovation from outside to sort of help our business is so critical, I think.
Thank you. I'm glad you've picked up the vernacular. I like the farm to fork. I've not heard that one before. And Phil Solsky, from your point of view, you said momentum is picking up. Is that true across the board, or are there certain types of telcos where you're seeing a lot more activity? Can you describe that sort of acceleration of move towards more fibre and 5G? And I guess you keeping your customer happy, because that's, I guess, the big issue from your side, is you're keeping your customer happy, who will in turn then keep their customers happy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, on the fibre side, I guess that train left the station 8, 9, 10 years ago, and certain parts of Europe now, such as Spain, are very well fibred. And in fact, it's only really the UK and Germany, in terms of large population countries, that are somewhat lagging behind. But with recent investment announcements and so on, we're seeing huge investment both in the traditional telcos, the likes of Deutsche Telekom, BT, and the alternates, the likes of Virgin Media and so on. Huge investment in fibre. So I think the acceleration there already kicked in a few years ago, and we're seeing the completion of that. But on the 5G side, I think it'd be fair to say that it's been primarily Western Europe where we're seeing that acceleration. Interestingly enough, in our African business, they're still very much focused on 4G and filling out the 4G LTE layer, but very much Western Europe for 5G. But in terms of then having invested in 5G, and there's still a long way to go to make 5G ubiquitous in all the town cities and the rural locations as well. But in terms of applications, where we're seeing, I would say, the most intense focus, not from the operators in terms of trials, because there are probably still only a few hundred, maybe 1,000 meaningful trials going on. But in terms of meaningful customer interest is in Germany, where the Mittelstand, I mentioned earlier on, something like 35, 40,000 quite large mid-sized companies in the UK. I think you can at least quadruple that in Germany. It accounts for the core of their manufacturing base. And we're seeing huge interest, not just interest, but desire to exploit what 5G can bring into these private manufacturing types campus environments, which is a background we've come from, having provided cellular coverage solutions into campus environments, and we're seeing a massive appetite now to expand that into these completely private campus-wide solutions. But to Phil's point, not just within the campus, you then need to extend that beyond the campus. Maybe you've got two factories in different parts of the country that you need to transport goods to and from, or you're a retailer from warehouse to store and so on. So I think there's still very much a role for the operator to play there as well. But in terms of where we're seeing that acceleration, back to your question, it's basically for 5G Western Europe, and in terms of use cases, particularly the Germanic countries from a manufacturing point of view.
Bill, if I might just come back to you for one final question. When you're sitting down talking with the senior executives at your large corporate customers, what is it that they are asking you for? Are they talking the language of 5G, IoT, and cloud and AI and so on, or are they just asking you to solve their business problems?
It's primarily to solve their business problem. They don't talk about specifically technology components, and the engagement has always been, here's our needs, here's sort of the business challenge, and we really want to run certain capability sets, and we really want to run a set of agile factories, for example, and we need to rewire the factory in a way that allows us to move our robotics kind of scenarios to allow high variable mix, low volume manufacturing, and therefore how we can bring solutions like the cloud and MEC and various types of solutions to be able to help support that. So it's always about the customer business needs. And we, being the service and the solutions provider, have to understand what is the best way to solve that problem. And 5G being just one of that, and the ability to aggregate cloud and compute and data analytics. So it's a platform that does quite a fair bit of things, but there are also other things that we bring to bear to really help the customer solve it. So it's a combination of technologies and services to blend this together to solve a customer need through some innovative solutions that we have. And also with the business model, through what we could do to ensure that the customers get to acquire that service instead of paying everything up front. So we've got the ability to sort of amortize that and deliver that as a service. So it's not just the technology, it's the services, it's the solutions, it's the business model that we're always discussing with our clients to make things work for them.
Excellent, thank you, Bill. I think it's a great note to on which to hand back over to Guy.
Yes, thank you, Chris. And so much of this kind of ties in very nicely with our ongoing DSP focus, but the aspirations of individual telcos, how far they want to go from being CSPs to digital services providers. Right, now you've all been presented with the facts, and we want you to participate. You may have your own questions for our witnesses. If you do, please send them in and we'll add them into the mix for our live show, which is on Wednesday, the 9th of December at 10 a.m. UK time. Now, get ready to vote, because here comes our motion.
And the motion is, telcos are in the optimum position to manage customer happiness in the increasingly digital world.
Well, that's our motion. What do you think? Chris and Graham have tossed the Great Telco Debate commemorative coin, which is getting a lot of use this year, to see who is going to speak for and against the motion. Chris, I see that you won the toss and you're speaking first and presenting your views for the motion.
Thank you, Guy. As Graham said in the introduction, this has been a topic we've covered many times during the Great Telco Debate over the years. Even more so this year, when we've seen connectivity underpinning this dramatic shift in consumption patterns and where we consume the services. And it's just emphasized the role of broadband, whether that's fixed or mobile, and the way it fits around our requirements as customers. I think this is true within our households, whether we extend that through Wi-Fi or we take it directly through mobile in our home environments, in the business environment, where we're increasingly starting to use connectivity services to get people linked in with more business processes. But fundamentally, the telco is increasing its touch points with the telco, with its customers. So in the past, we only really had occasion to talk to the telcos when we perhaps had a billing problem or so on. The introduction of omni-channel and especially digital services used during the pandemic have really opened up the opportunities for more interaction and keeping those customers happy. In brand terms, we talk about awareness and affinity. So people have been aware of the telco in the past, but had little affinity. As the service becomes more reliable and it becomes part of everything that we do in our business and personal lives, then that affinity starts to kick in and builds a stronger relationship, and people more likely to add other services on top of that connectivity layer.
Thank you, Chris. And now it's Graham's turn to present his views as to why we should vote against the motion.
Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Chris. Well, yes, I've picked. We've tossed a telco coin, and I've got to speak against the motion. And so, what I'm going to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, is this: is that telcos are in the optimum position not to create happiness for customers, but to create unhappiness for customers. And when they do their jobs well, they're largely invisible. When they do their jobs badly, through unreliability or poor coverage or billing problems or whatever, then they create unhappiness. And the major source of happiness or satisfaction that comes from consuming services over a telecoms network is actually generated by those OTT players like Netflix and Spotify, Google, and so on. So I would urge you to vote against the motion. I think telcos we need to stick to our knitting. We need to provide great connectivity, great coverage, but that's ultimately not going to drive great happiness.
Thank you, Graham. So we have our motion and we have our two very well argued views for and against. But what do you think, our audience? Are you for or against? Have your views been influenced by any of our expert witnesses, or have Chris and Graham's last minute pleas changed your mind? Vote now. Green and red buttons are there below this video, for and against. Just click the one that matches your choice. And next to that, there's an area where you can submit your questions, and we'll use those for our live show as we continue the debate and then reveal the final motion results. Thank you to all our guests for taking part today. Very much appreciated. And don't forget, there will be 6 debates and 6 corresponding motions. Catch them all, then come and join us for our live end-of-year Great Telco Debate. Goodbye for now.